The U.S. has launched criminal investigations over dirty, reused medical gloves that were supplied from Thailand. Meanwhile, Moderna Vaccines will finally arrive in Thailand on November the 1st, and Chiang Mai ramps up its vaccination efforts after recent clusters. That's all coming up in today's program. Welcome to the Thaiger channel, and you're watching Thailand News Today, bringing you the latest headlines in Thailand and beyond. Criminal investigations are now underway over millions of used medical gloves that were shipped from Thailand. With demand having skyrocketed around the world, an underground industry based around reusing personal protective equipment, or PPE, has emerged in Southeast Asia. According to a CNN investigation, tens of millions of dirty secondhand gloves have reached the United States, with the potential to place frontline healthcare workers and patients at risk. Criminal investigations are now underway in both the U.S. and Thailand. However, the true scale of the problem may be far greater than it appears at first blush. As countries around the world struggle to keep up with PPE demand, global shortages are set to remain an issue in the coming years, giving rise to fly-by-night outfits trying to make a quick buck. And adding to issues faced by U.S. authorities, import regulations related to protective medical equipment were temporarily suspended in the wake of the pandemic and remain so to this day. One expert says that nitrile gloves are, quote, the most dangerous commodity on Earth right now. Meanwhile, a U.S. businessman who placed an order for about $2 million of gloves from a Thai-based company, Patty the Room, described receiving washed and recycled gloves, some of which, quote, had blood stains. The gloves ultimately found their way to a landfill, with the businessman notifying U.S. authorities. The U.S. FDA issued a statement that import under the relaxed rules is only allowed as long as the gloves conform to the consensus standards and labeling cited in the guidance and where the gloves do not create an undue risk. However, lack of physical checks at U.S. ports has created potential for PPE to slip through the cracks. While the FDA did send an alert to its port staff that shipments from Patty the Room required detention, this occurred 5 months after 2 U.S. businessmen had raised the alarm. Department of Homeland Security officials confirmed that there is an ongoing criminal investigation into the company. Thai FDA agents raided Patty the Room last December, arresting the owner of the warehouse. However, they were unable to bring charges against the tenant, who is a Hong Kong resident. The company, meanwhile, simply relocated its operations. Deputy Secretary General of the Thai FDA, Supatra Bunseum, said that they just moved to another location and to another warehouse. And why is that? Because the demand for gloves is still high, and there are still customers waiting out there. As Thailand prepares to waive quarantine for vaccinated tourists from low-risk countries, the government is coming under pressure to ease some COVID-19 restrictions. The most resounding call by far is to finally allow restaurants to sell alcohol and for nightlife to resume. Countless bars and clubs remain shuttered, with many operators questioning how Thailand's reopening can succeed under such conditions. Thanakorn Kupatachit from the Thai Alcohol Beverage Business Association says Thailand risks losing out to neighbors like Singapore and Vietnam, where foreign tourists face no such restrictions on the consumption of alcohol. Thanakorn believes the economy can bounce back if the ban on restaurants selling alcohol can be lifted in time for the country's grand reopening. Meanwhile, Sanga Reungwattanakoon from the Khao San Business Association is also pushing for hotels and restaurants to be allowed to sell alcohol and called for insurance requirements for holidaymakers to be in line with other countries to keep up the country's competitiveness. He adds that for restaurant operators in the Khao San area, 80% of their income comes from tourism, and for this reason, it is vital to lift the ban on alcohol sales. Otherwise, Khao San, he says, will be no different from a cemetery. Meanwhile, Marisa Sukoson Nunpakdi from the Thai Hotels Association has joined the growing chorus for the alcohol ban to be lifted. She says that in Western culture, food is intrinsically linked to alcohol, and having a glass of wine or beer with dinner is normal. She points out that these are the people Thailand is targeting in its reopening campaign. Meanwhile, the Tourism Council of Thailand carried out a survey during the third quarter of this year, which shows that out of 8 types of tourism-related businesses, nightlife venues were the only ones to experience a 100% drop in revenue compared to pre-pandemic times. I mean, being 100% shut down will tend to have that result. 560,000 long-awaited doses of the Moderna vaccine will finally arrive in the kingdom on November the 1st. Their arrival has been confirmed by the president of the Private Hospital Association, Dr. Chalom Han Panit. He says the Department of Medical Sciences will first carry out quality checks, which Chalom says should not take more than 5 days. He says hospitals should receive them by November the 8th at the latest, and says people who pre-registered in the first round should contact their hospital. The PHA has ordered a total of 8.6 million doses of Moderna, with 1.5 million of these expected to arrive in December. Out of these, 1 million doses will go to the Thai Red Cross, with Ramathibodi and Sirirat hospitals getting 100,000 doses each. The remainder will be distributed to other hospitals, and all 8.6 million doses are expected to have arrived by next March. The delay in the arrival of the vaccine has created frustration among Thais and expats who registered and paid for Moderna. According to the government pharmaceutical organization, the authorized distributor, Zulik Pharma, experienced problems trying to get doses from its European site, but has now switched to one based in the US. Chalom says that people who have already had 2 doses of Sinovac, followed by an AstraZeneca booster this month, could be given a 4th dose using Moderna in the next 3 months. Those who received 2 doses of Sinovac but no booster could receive a Moderna booster immediately, whereas people fully vaccinated with AstraZeneca will need to wait 6 months before being eligible for a Moderna booster. He adds that the Thai FDA has also approved the Moderna vaccine for children between the ages of 12 and 17. The president of the Tourism Council of Chiang Mai is hoping a ramp-up of COVID vaccination efforts will help combat a recent surge. But before we get into that, a message from our sponsor.
Back to the program soon, but here I am once again with Sean Stenning from 5 Star Marine. Today, Sean, we're at one of your favourite islands.
Yeah, this is probably our most popular tour here. This is the first stop of our dolphin and snorkeling experience. This is Mai Ton, or also known as Honeymoon Island. The coral here is amazing. My son loves to come here and snorkel with the Nemo fish and then head on down and see the dolphins playing.
So there used to be like a really big resort here, but they're not sort of currently operating?
Yeah, not operating. Hopefully when the tourism season kickstart again, they'll reopen, but this was a very, very popular spot, and as the name states it, for honeymoons.
So this is about, what, 40 minutes from Phuket?
Yeah, about 40 minutes from Phuket. Yeah, stop 1 in our dolphin tour. Second stop, we go on to Banana Beach.
And often you get dolphins here.
Yeah, there's a pod here that plays around. We were out just yesterday and they were bow riding with our boat, so we just come to see them.
They haven't arrived yet. Didn't they get the memo?
Well, as my son would say, maybe we have not paid their salary yet today.
I think your son's right on the mark. Okay, Sean, good luck with that. 5 Star Marine back in action. The islands, as we keep on saying, have never looked better. And you can contact 5 Star Marine here. Phuket's open, as is Thailand.
Palop Satu says health officials are pulling out all the stops in a bid to get the northern province ready for the November the 1st reopening, as the recent clusters have affected local confidence. According to a report, Chiang Mai has around 30% of hospital beds available. However, the local disease committee says beds for critically ill patients are at 95% occupancy. Palop says over 51% of residents have received their first vaccine dose, me included, with over 35% fully vaccinated. The province has the capacity to administer up to 20,000 doses a day. Tourism operators are currently focusing their marketing campaigns on the 46 low-risk countries approved for the November the 1st reopening. For those that did not make the list, Chiang Mai's sandbox model remains an option, but tourists will have to purchase tour packages limited to 4 districts. They must also stay 7 days before they can travel elsewhere in the kingdom. Palop says the sandbox model is designed with golfers from Vietnam, Indonesia, and India in mind, but he acknowledges the revenue generated may not compare to the quarantine-free option. Meanwhile, Laiyat Bunsitong from the Thai Hotels Association says the province is unlikely to see any Chinese visitors before next February as China continues its pursuit of a zero-COVID strategy. She believes the growth rate of international arrivals in Chiang Mai in the first half of next year will remain in single digits, but she expects a 30% increase in domestic travel during the peak season this year and in early 2022. Airports of Thailand says international carriers have relinquished around 80% of their slots at Thailand's airports. AOT Managing Director Nitinai Siri Samathakan says around 80% of slots between October the 31st and March the 26th next year have been returned, indicating that airlines are uncertain about any imminent recovery in the aviation sector. Airport slots are the landing and takeoff permissions that airport owners grant to airlines. Thailand's 6 international airports have all been affected by the move. At Bangkok's Don Mueang, airlines have relinquished 100% of their slots, with 70% being returned at Suvarnabhumi. Nitinai says Thailand's aviation sector hit its lowest point during the period between July and September this year. This was when the government suspended all regular flights in a bid to get the COVID situation under control. During that period, the 6 international airports welcomed an average of just 50 passengers a day. He adds that once the restrictions were eased in October, that number jumped to 30,000 a day. Nitinai has hope that the aviation sector will gradually recover in the next 2 years. AOT has already endured operational losses of 11 billion baht during the first 9 months of this year. And that wraps up our report for today, but check out the videos that just popped up to continue watching other shows on our channel. Thailand News Today will be back tomorrow, so meanwhile, you're now up to date on the Thaiger.